So we have just spoke quickly about this new way of thinking about rendering our track. We are going to try to bypass those distance check of what is visible, and we're going to have to try to trust the linked list, right? That file that comes from the track sections. We're going to just trust that the file order, right? The order of the sections is going to be the actual order of the sections, one after the other in the linked list. Right, that means that now that we have this section pointer that is going to be, the closest section of the ship, right? The current closest section of the ship, I think that we have a ship init. Maybe in the initialization of the ship, we already go and we check and we already load this section with the closest one. That means that in our ship.c, right here in our ship init, we're going to have to probably, right here at the end, right? So right here at the end, we're going to have to compute the closest track section for that ship, right? So compute the ship's closest track section. And look, I don't think there is any better way of doing that than looping the track sections of the map, right? So all the track sections that we have of our map, we're going to have to go and loop. We're going to have to do a little while loop or do while, and then loop all the track sections, checking, right? So which one of all these track sections of the map is the closest one to our start position? I think we actually have the start position of the ship right here. And you know what? This is a very good opportunity for you to test and practice your C linked list chops, right? Maybe we could do that as an exercise, right? You can pause the video and try to implement this finding the closest section of our ship position. And it shouldn't be hard, right? You just loop all that linked list. I think we're already passing the track as a pointer. Just go loop all those track sections, trying to find, right, doing a little distance check and finding out which one is the closest one to our start position. So if you want to do that, just pause the video. I think it's more exciting if you get that done without actually seeing the code. But you know what? I'm going to cut to the chase and I'm going to just, snap my fingers and I'm going to just go and paste my solution. If you want to do that yourself, go ahead, pause the video and do that. But otherwise, I'm just going to go ahead and just give you my solution. So look at what I did, right? So we are going to compute the ship's closest track, right? So it is going to be the nearest track section out of all the track sections. Which one is the closest one to the ship? So I'm going to have a current, well, let me just declare all these variables already. So I have all these variables that I need to declare. I have a section pointer to the current section that I am visiting. I have a vector distance, right? So that is the distance between the track and the thing. And then I have a distance magnitude and the minimum distance, which is the closest section that I have right now has the minimum distance. Which means that for me to compute the nearest track section, I'm going to start the current section with the track sections. So this is the pointer to the start of the sections, correct? So I start with initial one. I am going to start something called the minimum distance with just a really large number, right? So whatever is the first one is going to be already the minimum distance. So this is just the huge number. So the first one is already going to overwrite this minimum distance. And then I have a loop. Remember how we need to have a do while because the sections, they don't end in null, right? So the sections, they just start and they start looping next, 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 next until we start again and we point to the start section, right? So it's going to have a do while the current one is different than the start, which is track sections. And every time the current one equals to current one next, because I need to go to the next and to the next, to the next. So what do I do with each current section that I'm visiting? Well, I'm loading a little d for distance, right? So I have to load x, y, and z with the subtraction between the current section center position x minus the start position, which is this thing that I am passing as parameter. Remember, I'm passing already the start position of the ship that I want to initialize, which is a vector xyz. So I go and I subtract the current center position minus the start position vx, and I do the same for y and z. So I just find this d, x, y, and z, which is the subtraction, right? The vector subtraction between the section center and the ship start position. And then I have to just check and say, distance magnitude, right? So I have to find the length of that distance. So this distance magnitude is the square root 1, 2, right? So the square root 12 fixed between x squared plus y squared plus z squared, right? That magnitude, I find the square root. And then, if by any chance the distance magnitude that I am of the current one is less than the minimum distance that I had before, so if this is true, then I found a new minimum distance. So minimum distance is the distance magnitude, and I am already saying the ship current closest section is the current one, right? So I am already setting, as I am visiting, I am already setting, if by any chance I found a new minimum distance, then the new closest section of the ship is this current one right here. And that's it. So at the end of my loop, hopefully, the closest section of the ship is the current one. And you know what? I can even try to check that by saying printf closest section to the ship current section is, well, we can print maybe the ID of the section. I think we have that ID, right, that number. And then break ship section, I think it is called ID. Yeah, I think we loaded that in ascending order. Cool, so I think that's it. I think I declared everything here. So section current, distance, vector, distance magnitude, minimum distance. I start minimum distance, right? Don't forget to start minimum distance with a huge number, because the first section that we are, distance magnitude, will be something less than, hopefully, right, less than 9999999, which is this huge number. So we already forced this one to be the first one. So that should be as simple as build ISO. Did I make any mistakes? No, right? Shouldn't have any mistakes. That was not that hard. Hopefully that is going to work. Which means that if we come here and we load the game ISO, let's just... Oh, I have to also show the TTY messages. Yeah, there we go. So we have everything here. And it says that the closest section to the ship is section number 12. Well, we're just going to have to trust that that is true, right? But the whole thing is, it is not enough for us to just load the ship initialization, right? So as I load and I say that this section is section 12, I have to, the moment that I start navigating, it has to be 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, because I have to update the closest section. So let's just quickly do that. At the moment that we are in our ship update, which is being called game loop by game loop, right? So we are in this ship update that is being called frame per frame. I think we need to have something very similar to this, right? That is going to check which is the closest section, but let's say right here, right after we, let's say after we updated all the row, before we update our rotation matrix, right here, let's just update the closest ship section, because maybe we moved the ship in front and we are going right front and then next. We should have a new closest section, the nearest section right now. And I would suggest maybe we can create something like update ship nearest section, right? So we can just go and say, look, I want to check if this section is now a new one, right? So we're going to have to find a new section, see which one is the closest one, and then if it is the closest one, we have to go and update the ship section pointer to the closest one. How about, again, as an exercise, go ahead and implement this, right? So let's just have something like a void update. What did I call that? So update ship nearest section. Let's just call this function update ship nearest section. And we probably, I think we have to pass the ship pointer, right? At least the ship pointer. I think that is something that we have to pass as a parameter, which means that right here we have to pass the ship, which is the pointer already. So there we go. All right, so you know what? Take this as an exercise. So you have to go and probably loop a couple of sections, maybe not even all the sections, but at least some of the sections ahead of you, because you have to check. Am I in the current section? Is it still that one, the old one that I have, or as I am moving, do I have a new nearest section? Right, so I think you don't even need to loop all the sections. Maybe just loop the, 1 or 2 or 3, maybe 5 sections ahead, the next sections ahead of you, to see if you have a new closest one. Because if you have a new closest one, then you just have to update the ship closest section to that new one, right, to the closest one that you just visited. Right, so yeah, go ahead, just quickly implement this closest section update function, and I'll be back very soon with my implementation. And then now that we have always, right, now that we are always updating the closest section, then it's going to be a lot easier for us to determine, this new render function that just renders the 30 sections ahead of us based on the current one that we are right now, right? That is the goal. That is the reason why we are doing all of that, because since we have now always the closest section, based on the closest section, then we can just ask to render the sections ahead of us or behind us, right, or to the left, because we always have to base our rendering on the closest section that we are from the ship, right, from the camera ship that we are visiting and we are navigating right now.